Let's kick this list off right away at number 5 with a character who's widely regarded as having the best butt in all of comics. At number 5, we have Nightwing, aka Dick Grayson, the first Robin, by Medicom Mafex. And I'm going with Mafex because it sounds mightier than Mafex, and nobody from Medicom has told me otherwise. But here we go. This is the guy that supposedly owns the greatest butt in all of comics. I don't know, maybe Medicom went crazy with the sculpt, but I'm digressing big time. The thing to really appreciate about this figure is how simple the design is and how well executed that simple design was. I know from graphic design that sometimes the most difficult designs to mess with are the ones that are super simple. For instance, it's easier to draw Nightwing than it is to draw Snoopy or something like that. It's just a little tougher. So the fact that they went in and they were able to make this figure look this good and function this well when it comes to how simple the costume is just something that kind of blows my mind. It's really quite incredible when you have a background that teaches you how difficult simple really is to achieve. Now, you'll notice in the photos today that I'm using portrait mode. That's what's getting me those crazy blurs in the background. So if you're going to grab a figure and kind of play while you're watching this video, make sure that you set your smartphone to portrait mode, and that way you'll be able to adjust the background as far as blur is concerned, and you'll also still have all the other controls that you would normally have when adjusting just something that was taken in a good old-fashioned photo mode. But anyway, enough of that. This is the Medicom Mafex Dick Grayson, aka Nightwing, and ladies and gentlemen, he's my number 5 in my top 5 better than $50 figures. Here's today's lighting setup. It's not going to change at all for the photos or the video. Now remember to stick around to the end of the video for today's Patreon freebie and yesterday's Toypixx photo. At number 4, we have the Medicom Mafex Storm. Now, Storm is one of my absolute favorite mutants. I would count her in amongst Wolverine and Magneto as being the top 3. Those 3 awesome mutants. This Storm, awesome figure. She doesn't have a traditional bicep cut, but the way they engineered her shoulders still makes it so her arm can go all the way across her chest, which is pretty awesome once you bend it. I mean, it's not like her upper arm can go across, but her lower arm can, and it just works really well. The one thing that I'm a little lost on this one, though, is the way they did the cape, the way that it attaches to her wrists. It kind of leaves a little bit to be desired. If you want it to look good, you have to try and find a way to slide them underneath the wristbands that she's wearing, and that can be a little tricky. But checking her out, she's got kind of a really nice pearlescent color and just looks fantastic. And one of the details that she's got going on that a lot of people haven't really brought up is that the boot color is completely different than the rest of the white of her uniform. It's like they took the time to make sure to show us that the boots are made out of a different material than the rest of her suit is made out of. And it just looks really good. And the gold accents that are going on this figure look perfect. They complement the white and the red and the black really well. The red and black of the X's on her shoulder pads, and then her face, just the fact that you've got that white suit that really isn't all that accurate if you ask me. I'm thinking she really should be wearing a black suit, but the way that the white suit kind of goes, it sort of complements the brown skin and everything else. It looks really cool from a color perspective. So I'm just super stoked about this. This is probably one of the best female figures that Mafex has done, and they've done a lot of really good ones. So yeah, man, that was number 4. Storm, if you don't have her, go get her. Digging the video so far? Sweet! Dig action figure photography? Sweeter! Scan the QR code for your free action figure photography guide and get signed up for the Toypixx newsletter so you can stay up to date on all the Toypixx things. Now, back to the video. At number 3, speaking of my top 3 favorite mutants, we have the only purple and red suited Magneto that I will ever have to buy. This thing is what I would call utter perfection. I don't know what Mafex could have done to make this a better figure. It is absolutely wonderful. The cape has a nice little shine to it, almost like a shimmer. The purple parts on him have that same thing going on. It goes above and beyond the whole glossy thing. It's sort of it's almost metallic, which I guess makes sense for Magneto, but it just looks really good the way he works. And it's a Mafex figure, or Mafex. Let's keep going with the Mafex train. But yeah, you know that he's going to have ridiculously great articulation. The head that you're seeing in these images right now is exactly how Jim Lee would draw him when it was about time for some kind of ominous thing to go down with Magneto. It's just really good work. And the piece around his neck that is holding on to the cape, that's incredible. It's got a really nice shine to it. The helmet is ultra glossy almost. Not quite crazy glossy, but it just looks right. Like, this Magneto is pretty incredible. So if you dig Magneto, if you dig the X-Men, I truly believe this is the best one that's ever come out. And I've gotten several of the Marvel Legends one. I ended up selling them, but I did have them. And compared to this guy, yeah, that ain't it. If you want one Magneto, and you never want to have to buy a Magneto in the purple and red costume again, you go out and you buy this Magneto, because guess what? He's going to be the guy that actually gets that done. He's just that good. Now, of course, he comes with all kinds of power effects because Magneto. He also has all kinds of hands. He's got a couple other heads. This guy is loaded for bear, and if your X-Men need some kind of villain to throw down with, at least if you're talking your 90s X-Men, this is probably the perfect figure for that. Whether they're Marvel Legends, whether they're SH Figuarts, whether they're Mafex, this, I'm fairly confident, is the Magneto for you. So, there you go, folks. That is Magneto, a wonderful figure. At number 2 from Metacom Mafex, and right now you're thinking to yourself, what the crap does this guy only get Metacom Mafex when it comes to buying figures that are $50 and up? Not only, but they are the majority of what I get in that price range. Anywho, let's get back to Steel here. Steel is Mafex firing on all cylinders. He also proves that they can make figures that are a little taller than the standard Mafex figure and make them look great. He's got a little subtle blue on the suit portions, but when you look at the boots and when you look at the Superman symbol, and when you look at like the crotchal region, I suppose you could call it, and the wrist guards and the hammer and everything, it's a really nice silver. But that blue that's all over him has a real cool shimmer to it, and he just looks great. And the way they did his shoulder pads, that's one of the ways that I look at it and just say, wow, that is them at next level, because they look like they'd be really heavy, but they're actually really light. They get out of the way incredibly well. The cape is designed super well. Steel might be the first figure that I have that had the cape going down, like the wire going down the side and also going along the bottom for just absolutely perfect posability. He is amazing. And I have to say that while the Mafex DC Hush line, the Batman line, is probably my favorite subline in all of action figures right now, I have to think that really what it boils down to is whoever they have working on the DC team is just nailing it. It's because of Steel that I can't wait to get my hands on Bane. The only thing that would be better when it comes to this Steel, words are hard, is if he came with a John Henry Irons head. But he didn't. And that's okay, because this guy is pretty much perfection. In fact, there's only one figure that I've got on this list who I think actually beats the guy. And now here are two sets that I believe deserve special recognition. I just couldn't fit them into the less than $50 action figure video, and I also don't feel like they're quite right for the over $50 action figure video, but I think you're gonna think they're pretty cool anyway. Here we go. Okay, the first of those sets I was talking about is the NECA Eastman and Laird Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4-pack. Because really, I did not know where to put these guys. If you were to split them out from the 4-pack, they should be $37.50, so they would have fit in the under 50 video, but you couldn't get them at $37.50. You had to pay $150, so I didn't think they belonged there, and I wanted to make sure and give them a shout out because anybody who's been following Toypixx for any length of time, specifically on sites like X/Twitter, knows that every Turtle Tuesday just about this year, they've seen these guys show up. And frankly, that's because these turtles are just such a blast to shoot. And they're really my first foray into NECA. And since I loaded up on them, I'm gonna need more. I ended up with some Universal Monsters and TMNT crossover figures over Christmas from the sister, which are incredible figures. I got Zog and I got a red-shirted Casey Jones from the mom. I'm basically all in on the NECA Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, it looks like, at least as far as the Eastman and Laird sets or, collection's concerned. And I owe it to these guys because these are truly one of the most fun sets out there to just mess with. If you watch a lot of this stuff when it comes to YouTube, you'll notice I'm not the only guy talking about these things. A lot of people ended up picking them up and deciding, holy geez, these are really incredible figures. Now, they didn't come with tons compared to a lot of what NECA ends up with. They only came with 8 extra hands in the 4-pack. There were no extra heads. You could switch out the bandanas so you could get like a more relaxed look for them. And then there were also 3, I don't know if you'd consider them ninja stars or shurikens or what the deal is, but they came with those as well. Then you got a little like potato sack thing to go over Raft to make it look like the Mirage Studios comics, which makes some sense. And there's just all kinds of good stuff going on here. Like, I can't stress how great this whole thing is because these guys are remarkable, man. Like, if you're even considering getting into the Eastman and Laird collection, you definitely need turtles, so you might want to check these out. The secondary market might not be too kind, but it might be okay, so who knows? But yeah, that's the first special mention of this video. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have what may very well be the greatest vehicle ever released in 1/12 scale. This is the Hasbro G.I. Joe Classified HasLab His Tank. It came with this tactician. It also came with a driver. And it came with a gunner. It even came with Cobra Commander that I still have in the package just in case the repaint that will inevitably come out doesn't come with extra hands. So this thing came loaded for bear, and it's got all kinds of lights that work out. It's got opening back so you can actually store your figures in there. It's got working treads. This thing, honestly, I could not think of anything while I was reviewing this in a prior video that I would have wanted them to come up with, like, differently. Look at that. There's even a red light in the back where people can hang out. That's ridiculous. Everything they did on this thing, they just paid attention to every minute detail. There's the gunner hanging out up top with, the guns. There's the driver hanging out in there with those lights on. And there's the front lights. Folks, listen, I'm a photography guy. Look at that. You got the Cobra logo and all that. I'm a photography guy. Those headlights can actually be used as a light source when you're shooting action figure photography. And that is one of the coolest things for me. It might not be so cool for most, but for me, it's awesome. I also really like this thing because I've talked many times about not being all 80s all the time. This his tank, you can customize it so it looks the way I have it right now, so that it is definitely not all 80s all the time. This is much more of a classified look, but you can also remove that canopy, put on the old school canopy, so it's just a clear canopy. You can remove the rockets and you can remove the side panel and make it look just like an old school hiss. So this thing really works for absolutely everybody. I was trying to come up with the absolute best comment I could, the best compliment I could for this vehicle, and the best thing I could think of to say is that had I gotten this his tank before the Dragonfly was solicited, I would have backed the Dragonfly just because of how good this thing is. Truly, I'm not sure that I've ever had a vehicle that I enjoy as much of this as this, except maybe the heavy articulated vehicle ordnance carrier. So that's what I'm hoping they really get cracking on for the next HasLab is the Havoc, because that thing, ooh, that would make my dreams come true. But yeah, man, hopefully you didn't miss out on this thing, because this is probably about the best vehicle that was released this year, at least to me. Obviously, my top 5 has been pretty Mafex heavy so far, so you might be surprised by number 1. And now, at the number 1 spot in the list of my favorite over $50 action figures of 2023 is the Transformers 30 MDLX Megatron. Yo, people, listen. Alright, so there are some figures that you buy and you almost feel like the quality is so good for what you paid. And this isn't a cheap figure, this was an $80 figure. But you almost feel like the quality is so good for what you paid that you almost ripped off the company that made this. And that's how I feel about this figure. All the metal that's going on is crazy. All the paint that's going on is nuts. He's got kind of a rust coat over him, like if you look in the crevices there, you can see a little bit of a brown wash that got in there to just make him look a little dingier, a little older, perhaps even a little rustier. Hopefully not cosmic rust though, because I'd like to keep holding on to this guy for a very long time. Last year's winner for my figure of the year overall was the MDLX Optimus Prime, which means that this Megatron is an absolutely perfect companion piece for last year's winner. So I am just absolutely in awe of this thing. I am so excited to have it. It moves incredibly well. In case you've never had a 3-0 action figure, the way that they engineer these things is absolutely nuts. You would not think that you could get the double elbows. You wouldn't think you could get the crazy shoulder movement that you could get. You wouldn't think you can get the massive leg movement at the knee or the hip movement where you can just move the flaps and kick the legs out and all those things. And that is the one caution when it comes to Megatron here, is sometimes if you get a little crazy and you don't move the flaps before you really try messing with the legs, you're gonna maybe knock off the flap, but it's held in by a pretty sturdy ball joint, so plugging it back in is no big deal. So yeah, man, this thing is absolutely wonderful, and it's kind of like where in the under $50 figure list I talked about how great Jada was doing. Mafex obviously kills it, and 3-0 kills it. I feel like Mafex is more of a known quantity, though, than 3-0 is. And I just think if you're into Transformers, and you can handle them when they don't transform, that you need to give some kind of 3-0 Transformer a shot. And the reason I went with the MDLX line is because these aren't very tall figures. This Megatron clocks in at about 7 inches, so he is just incredibly rad. And ladies and gentlemen, I think you need to add this guy to your collection. So there you have it, folks. Those were my 5 favorite figures above $50 of 2023, with a couple special mention sets thrown in there as well. So do me a favor, comment below, let me know, what do you think of the figures I chose? Did you choose any of them? And if not, what are your top figures above $50? These are the real important questions that need to be answered. And while you're looking at all these pretty pictures, I'm warming up because it's just about time to show you guys yesterday's Toypixx photo featuring, a lot of fun stuff because that's what I like to do on a free-for-all Friday. And now it's time for yesterday's Toypixx photo, and yesterday was Friday. It was a Friday free-for-all, so I shot this pic. What we have here is Chester Cheetah making peace on Eternia with He-Man and Skeletor. Peace brought to us all by the power of Cheetos. Not Grayskull, no. Snack stick thingies. Anywho, the QR code is on there so you can scan it and head over to the Toypixx X page so you can comment with your own free-for-all figure photo. Good Lord, we have a tongue twister because that's really where the fun's at for me to see how all of you are doing when it comes to your photography. So scan the QR code, head to the X, let's have some fun. And now it's time for today's Patreon freebie. For today's Patreon freebie, and as longtime viewers of the channel know, when I say Patreon freebie, it's redundant because everything I post on Patreon is free. So head over to the Toypixx Patreon page and pick a tier, any tier. There's even a free tier. But today's freebie is every image that I shot in the past week. You can get it in a high-res file or you can get it in a Photoshop file. Now, I do that for 3 reasons. I do it every Friday, and the reasons are as follows. The first one is if you just dig the photos and you want to download them, put them on your wallpaper, maybe hang them up somewhere, I'm cool with that. They're totally free. The second reason is, let's say you're a shop owner, like a pop culture shop, like a toy or a comic shop owner, then you can also download those images and use them as marketing materials, because I know how tough it is to find images that you can use for marketing materials. And the third reason is if you're a graphic designer wondering how I structure Photoshop files, you can download the Photoshop file and see how I put it together and find out for yourself whether or not that would work for you. So there you go. Those are the reasons that I put those files up for free on the Patreon. So get them if you dig them. That's why the QR code's there. Yeah, I make things simple when I can. QR codes, they're pretty simple. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is all I've got for today. So as always, thank you very much for showing up and taking the time to check out this video. It is massively appreciated. And until next time, have fun and happy snapping. See ya.